Scotland is blessed with natural beauty. Unspoiled wilderness, deep lochs, ancient peatlands. Our rugged coastline spans around 12,000 miles, from wind-whipped beach to surging shore to far-flung fishing ground. For millennia, folk have lived in this landscape and relied on its natural gifts. In our modern world, we still depend on nature, and water is perhaps the most priceless resource on the planet. In Scotland, we may feel like we get a lot of rain, and due to climate change, it now rains 13% more than it did 100 years ago. But today's rainfall comes in surges, so it's harder than ever to manage Scotland's water. Heavier rain washes peat off the hills, organic matter can make some water discoloured, and warmer water takes more effort, science and money to make safe and pure. To keep our water the way we like it, cool, fresh, clear, straight from the tap. So let's spare a thought for what it takes to pipe Scotland's water to your home while you run a tap, brush your teeth, take a shower, wash clothes, make soup, enjoy a cuppa, water your plants or flush the loo. Scottish Water produces 1.5 billion litres a day, every day. The average person in Scotland uses about 180 litres of water a day, far more than people in England and elsewhere. And our infrastructure was never designed to cope with this demand, or the pressure of population shift, or the extremes of climate change. Scottish Water invests over £800 million a year in infrastructure to keep our water system running. We also look after more than 60,000 miles of pipes, over 2,000 treatment works and around 300 reservoirs, all to ensure that everyone has access to beautiful, affordable water, but also to ensure that wastewater is thoroughly treated, recovering resources as it's safely returned to the environment. It takes more than 4,500 people to provide Scotland with quality water, and wastewater services we've all come to know and expect. Engineers, scientists, customer service representatives, computer technicians, security analysts, the maintenance teams you'll see out and about in our distinctive vans, even water tasters. On average, our expert water samplers test the water we supply to your taps every 2 minutes to ensure its purity. The water we all take for granted is a massive undertaking. Scottish Water is publicly owned, and every penny we make is reinvested for public good. In return, all we ask is that all of us respect this precious resource, to value this astonishing stuff which literally falls out of the sky. Because water is vital to the health, well-being and prosperity of the nation to help support a flourishing Scotland. Scottish Water. Cool, fresh, clear, and only available right here.
A very warm welcome to you all this evening, and many thanks for taking the time to join us for Scottish Water's annual Consultative meeting 2024. And I hope you all really enjoyed that video. It certainly brings out a lot of pride in those of us that work with and for Scottish Water. So I'm delighted to be here with Alex Plant, CEO of Scottish Water, and his leadership team, as well as other members of the board of Scottish Water. And it's great that we're live streaming our ACM from Aberdeen, although as a local you would expect me to say this. And so to everyone who is online as well as in the room today, you are all most welcome. But on a more serious point, it is important that as a publicly owned, independently regulated, but commercially run organisation, we do get out and about across the whole of Scotland to help raise awareness, transparency and accountability about who we are and what we do. And all the better to be able to host today's event in Aberdeen's superb Science Centre, which offers a fun and educational experience, highlighting what a precious and vital resource water is. And earlier today, we hosted a visit of Primary 5 pupils from the nearby Hanover Street Primary School, who took part in an activity from our Generation H2O National Schools programme, which aims to work with our young people to create a generation of responsible water citizens. And the children designed lovely rain chains, which you'll see around the venue tonight. And Alex and I spoke with them earlier, and they described to us what they would do and how they would do it. And I think we've got some representatives from the school here today, so thank you very much for coming. And perhaps we could have a wee round of applause for the children who were with us today. And I think I was really pleased because when we did ask them, you know, what 3 Ps are you supposed to put down the toilet, and only 3 Ps, they were very clear what those were, so that was very good. So I'm also really pleased that Scottish Water will be working in partnership with Aberdeen Science Centre for the next year, so that altogether we will be delivering workshops on the water cycle to hundreds of children in the north east of Scotland. But turning our attention to this evening, this meeting is a key opportunity to update you on our performance for the last year and look ahead to the future. And of course, we want to hear directly from you, your thoughts, your ideas, and any questions you may have. That's really important for us tonight and at all times. And as I said, this meeting is being live streamed. And so to everyone online, please, ask any questions that you may have by following the guideline notes on the YouTube channel. So how did we do in 2023-24? Well, I'm pleased to report it was another good year for us in terms of what we were able to achieve, given that Scottish Water plays a vital role to lives here in Scotland, as this slide behind me highlights. And in terms of our overall performance, it held up well, despite significant external challenges, and we continued to deliver excellence in terms of water quality performance of 99.92%. And we ended the financial year within target in most of our key areas. We also delivered record investment, topping the £1 billion mark for the first time. And this was spent, as you would expect, upgrading and replacing assets across Scotland, all vital to enabling our customers to go about their daily lives and to protect and enhance our precious natural environment. However, our rapidly changing climate is one of the biggest issues we face. Unpredictable weather patterns make it harder to deliver the quality of water and the wastewater services that our customers expect and that we strive to deliver. Now, the good news is that although last year brought an unprecedented number of named storms over autumn and winter, with, of course, increased flooding, and that was followed by a prolonged period of record hot weather in the summer, although it didn't feel like that up here. But we did step up, as you would expect of us, and we managed these extreme weather events well, minimising the impact on our customers as much as we could. Across Scotland, our teams are always committed to going out in all weathers and working around the clock to repair bursts, restore supply, and be on hand 24/7 to answer customer calls and offer advice and support. And each time we handle such incidents, the team draws out the lessons learned and takes them forward to help us prepare for future events. Because we know that these are not isolated incidents, and that we must find new ways of managing extreme weather so that we are ahead of the game wherever we can be. So this means transforming the way we operate, as well as continuing to work constructively with our customers, our regulators, and all other water and land users, a Team Scotland approach that Alex is driving forward. And while we are proud of the water quality we supply, we also recognise the concerns that people rightfully have about the water environment and the pollution incidents that occur. So again, Alex will speak more about this, but I want to reinforce that this issue is certainly one that has the board's full focus as we seek to improve performance further. As a board, we obviously focus on all risks faced by Scottish Water, current ones as well as those likely to challenge future generations. And getting the balance right is key, with clear non-negotiables when it comes to the health and safety of the people of Scotland and of our team at Scottish Water. Now, at the same time, we must also work hard to deliver value for money for every pound we spend. And we're a major contributor to Scotland's economy, employing thousands of people directly and indirectly across the country. And with that comes big responsibility to our owners, the Scottish Government and the people of Scotland, as well as to the people we employ, our independent regulators, our partners we work with, the environment and the customers we serve. So at Scottish Water, we're also playing our part in supporting the drive to net zero with our focus on reducing our own operational greenhouse emissions. And of course, here in Aberdeen, we are in an area that is committed to being at the forefront of the global energy transition, focusing on leading a rapid shift to net zero by leveraging the region's unique assets and capabilities, particularly offshore wind. And Scottish Water is also ready to work with the partners in the energy sector and beyond, both here in Aberdeen and across the country, to learn and share ideas and innovation, particularly as the interplay between water and renewable energy will only become more important in the future. So yet another great reason for us to be here in the Granite City. Now, at a time of increasing challenges, Alex and the team bring the skills, the experience and the professionalism to drive excellence across all aspects of Scottish Water's performance. Being bolder, more innovative and thinking out of the box is where this organisation is heading, with Alex taking the lead to ensure we continue to support a flourishing Scotland. And the commitment by him, along with everyone at Scottish Water with their strong sense of purpose, is what positively sets this company apart. So let me now hand over to our Chief Executive, Alex Plant, who's going to talk to you more about our performance for 2023-24. Alex.
Thanks very much, Deirdre, for those kind words, and good evening, everyone, or should I say fit-like, given we're here in Aberdeen. And thanks to all of you in the room and those of you online. I've been reliably informed by a Doric-speaking colleague that was an appropriate opener for tonight. I'm sure I can do the accent properly, but thanks again, particularly to the Quines and Loons from Hanover Street Primary School, whom Deirdre and I really enjoyed meeting earlier, and who asked us some pretty difficult questions, as I was saying to the head teacher earlier. Perhaps some good preparation for later. Okay, enough with the Doric. It'd be quite a short talk if I try to stay with it any longer. But what I do want to do is to say how great it is to be here in Aberdeen, and just to say how great it is to be here in this lovely centre and give you a chance to hear how we're performing and to hear from you about issues you have. It doesn't really seem a year since our last consultative meeting when I was just a few months into my time here at Scottish Water. And in the year in between, I've got to know a lot more about Scottish Water and about Scotland, and I'm now an even bigger fan of both than I was a year ago. And what we have tonight is a great opportunity to update you on how we're doing. And the key areas I'll try and cover this evening will include some highlights of our performance last year, how we're making progress towards the net zero ambitions that Deirdre mentioned, how we're going about trying to become bolder and more innovative in the way we work, and the importance of that Team Scotland approach. And I'll also talk about why we need to maintain investment if we are to be resilient to a climate that is changing rapidly around us. So firstly, to talk a bit about our performance for the year just gone. How are we doing? Well, when I took over last year, I knew I was joining an organisation which works around the clock to deliver a vital service and rightly has a great reputation both within and beyond Scotland. And I've been able to see firsthand the dedication our people have to their work and to our customers as I've been able to visit teams across the country. And I find that really inspiring and heartwarming wherever I go. And it makes me really proud to be part of the Scottish Water team. And one thing that's really struck me since moving up from England is that Scottish Water has a government that's proud of us, regulators who want to work constructively with us, and customers who trust us. And all of that is hugely important. And with common goals across all organisations working on water, it makes it a lot easier for us to work together to respond to some pretty tricky challenges. Now, that Team Scotland mindset means we can work together to try to ensure we make the right trade-offs and choices as we face into the future. And everything we're doing collectively is trying to meet the needs of customers, communities, and the environment now and in the future. Now, we're publicly owned, so any returns we do make are reinvested to deliver services into homes and workplaces and in seeking to maintain the first-class service that our customers rightly expect. And I was really pleased to see this year that our customer satisfaction rates remain high. So the UK Customer Satisfaction Index puts Scottish Water at the very top of the list of water companies in the UK, and we're second in utilities overall. And that's a really good outcome, given the ongoing and understandable scrutiny that the water sector is facing. But I also know we've got to raise our game if we're going to maintain that trust and ensure that customer satisfaction stays high. I'm also pleased looking at our performance on the whole held up well last year, as Deirdre said, despite some really tricky challenges, as mentioned. Now, water quality remains really high, and we continue to hear how proud our customers are of the clear, fresh, and great-tasting water we deliver to your taps. The Independent Drinking Water Quality Regulator's annual report, published just last month, showed Scotland's water as being among the finest in the world. Quite an accolade, and one that I hear echoed in discussions with customers around Scotland. And every time I travel these days, I take a full Scottish Water bottle with me, one of them, so I can carry on enjoying the finest in the world for a bit longer before I have to refill from a different tap somewhere. And turning to bathing waters, 84% of designated bathing waters were rated excellent or good across Scotland in this last year, and that's more than ever before. And that's testament to work done by our teams, but also by a range of partners across Team Scotland to improve the coastal areas that are used and loved by so many. Now, we've got more work to do in this area, but it's good to see that it's moving in the right direction. And the quality of our water bodies in Scotland is also high. SEPA rate 87% to be in good or better ecological condition. Now, at the same time, we all recognise that there's been growing concern about how and when combined sewer overflows, or CSOs, operate. It's been in the news a lot recently, and we really welcome the considered assessment of these issues by Environmental Standards Scotland, or ESS, in their recent report on this matter. Now, when we have rain, the storm drains outside will take water into our wastewater treatment works. And in normal times, this gets treated alongside all the wastewater that comes from our homes and businesses before it's then released to the environment, having been treated to the standards required. And when we have really heavy rain, a CSO operates a bit like an overflow in your bath. It releases water to prevent the drainage system backing up into everybody's homes. Now, when used as designed, as that ESS report notes, the CSO should not cause any environmental harm. What is released is mainly water. It's that storm water, it's rainwater, it's a runoff from roads, it's grey water. And less than 1% will be toilet waste. And that level of dilution doesn't cause environmental harm. And CSOs play a crucial role in enabling us to manage the system, even with heavy rain. And of course, we comply with the licenses we have with SEPA. As I said earlier, that 87% of waterways being in good or better ecological condition is a strong position, and it's improved over recent years. But of course, we all want to move towards that 100%. But an important fact to remember here is even if Scottish Water spent all of its customers' money just on this issue, we could maybe on our own nudge it up to about 88 or 89%. The rest of that closure to 100 needs to come from other changes to other things that affect environmental water quality, such as how nutrient flow is controlled into rivers from farmland, how roads runoff works, industrial discharge. So the ESS report also rightly points to the importance of getting more information about all of this out to the public. We agree, and it's a key strand of our £500 million Improving Urban Waters route map. And I'm pleased to report that we are ahead of schedule in our plans to install more than 1,000 monitors by the end of the year, and we now aim to actually go beyond that to reach a target of 1,500 by 2025. And that's part of a growing intelligent network of assets, which will help us better understand what's happening and to be able to share this information with the public. So we've also been working really hard to provide an easy-to-use information portal for the public around when CSOs are operating, and that will go live in December. So another challenge last year was the fact that we had a big reduction in our buying power. Now, Deirdre talked about our record $1 billion of investment, but like everyone else, we're paying a lot more for goods and services than we used to. And in particular, construction price inflation is much higher than general inflation. I'll stop hitting the mics in a minute, sorry. And this means that now, more than ever, we've really got to ensure that we're investing efficiently because we're getting less bang for our buck than we used to. And then finally, looking at last year's performance, I was disappointed that we saw our leakage rate go up last year. Despite the fact that we repaired a higher volume of leaks than in the previous 5 years, we actually saw an increase in total leakage for the first time in many, many years. Now, to address this, we've put together a dedicated team. We've put new techniques in place that enable us to trace and fix leaks more quickly and to reduce the likelihood of leaks happening in the first place. And we're already seeing real improvements, and I hope that we can end the year back to our target levels of that long-term reduction in leakage. Now, to touch on net zero, Deirdre talked about this a little earlier on, but we really understand the vital role that we play in ensuring a sustainable future for Scotland. And it's really good to report that at the halfway point of our current regulatory period, we are on track to meet our goal of delivering net zero emissions by 2040. And to date, we've removed around 27,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions through using less energy, generating renewables, transitioning our fleet of vehicles to net zero, and capturing carbon across our land holdings. And in parallel, we're also reducing emissions from our investment programme by choosing lower carbon options in how we construct. And we plan similar levels of reduction over the next 3 years, really embracing the circular economy in areas such as using bioresources to create biogas, using heat from sewers, and turning grit from wastewater into building materials. And our key part of all of this work is led by Scottish Water Horizons. That's our commercial subsidiary, which is taking forward a range of opportunities focused on delivering renewable technologies. And all the profits from Horizons activities get reinvested into renewable energy projects. And we invested 4.2 million last year alone on that activity. And going back to 2015, we've seen our renewable energy programme cut about 5,000 tonnes of carbon annually. And to give you a sense of what that is, that's about the same amount as if you travelled by train from Aberdeen to London 224 times each year. And I really hope no one in this room has had to do that. We've also led in recovering low-carbon heat from wastewater, delivering the first 5 projects in Scotland, including collaborations with local authorities and urban regeneration companies. Now, these projects are giving affordable heat into schools, to businesses and homes. I'm really excited about the opportunities to do more of that as we go forward. We're also supporting green hydrogen projects across Scotland, and building that hydrogen economy is a key part of that net zero transition. And water plays an essential role in the production of hydrogen. So again, I'm really excited by the opportunities for how we can think about hydrogen plants and where they can be located. Ideally, if we can co-locate them with some of our key wastewater treatment sites, such as in Nig, you can get a real bang for buck by using final effluent as your input stock for hydrogen production. And we reached a net zero milestone this year with a groundbreaking project that harnesses hydropower from our wastewater treatment works at Hamilton. So this is a hydro turbine that is set to cut carbon emissions by about 64 tonnes each year. And again, to give you a flavour of that, that's like a passenger jet flying from Glasgow to Sydney 13 times. And again, I really hope no one's had to do that this year. That would be even worse. But elsewhere, our growing network of top-up taps has been a great success, and they're really helping to reduce plastic waste. We've got about 130 top-up taps in place now in cities, towns and beauty spots across Scotland, and more are coming. And they deliver fresh, great-tasting water for people on the go. There's about 11 across Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, and hopefully you'll have seen and better yet used them. They're really great for people's health, they're great for their pockets, and to date we think the taps have saved more than 10 million single-use plastic bottles. I talked earlier about becoming bolder and more innovative. And I've really been pleased this year to have travelled throughout the country to connect with thousands of our colleagues and to really discuss how everyone in Scottish Water can play their part in delivering our purpose of supporting a flourishing Scotland and our 3 strategic ambitions of service excellence, value for money and financial sustainability, and going beyond net zero. And across our teams and our partners, health, safety and well-being is always our prime concern. And led by our Chief Operating Officer, Peter Farrer, and our Director of Capital Investment, Rob Mustard, is in the front row here, and our Head of Health and Safety, Kirsty McLaughlin, we are redoubling efforts to work with our supply chain to learn lessons and improve health and safety outcomes for all. Now we know, looking ahead, we're going to have to be bolder, we're going to have to be more innovative if we are to be resilient and to protect our resources and services, to keep our taps flowing, to keep our toilets flushing, and to keep that environment flourishing. And we must invest more than ever before in infrastructure, in our people, and in the latest technology. Now, last month, Simon Parsons, our Director for Environment, Planning and Assurance, and I had the real honour of representing Scottish Water at the International Water Association's Congress in Toronto. Industry colleagues from around the world were sharing insights into how breakthroughs in science, technological innovation, and new approaches are really helping to transform water and wastewater management across the globe. And we at Scottish Water are a really key part of that story, given the work we do, research and innovation, especially in relation to climate change adaptation, and to how we're using nature-based solutions as a response to that. And the work we're doing here in Scotland is being noticed, copied and commended by peers in other countries. And it gives us great momentum for the next Congress, which is going to be held here in Scotland, in Glasgow in 2026, which will be a brilliant opportunity to showcase what Scotland and the UK can offer the global water sector as it seeks to respond to the challenges of climate change that are being experienced across the world. Now, our transformation programme, led by Keshe Skoviak, is central to being bold and innovative. In the last year, that's included installing state-of-the-art digital technology, our wastewater treatment works, significantly reducing energy consumption and giving us real-time data that helps us to ensure that sites are operating as they should be, but also critically allowing us to intervene swiftly if there are any issues and before there's any impact on customers or on the environment. So that ability to respond ahead of time is critical. And there are loads of case studies I could highlight to showcase innovation. And many of those are set out in our latest annual report, and there's the cover of that on the screen now, which I hope you had the chance to have a look at. Just to come back to that Team Scotland approach, there's a lot we're going to have to do to make sure we can still deliver high quality services whilst ensuring we're helping Scotland to adapt, to flourish, to grow. But we can't do this on our own. We need to work with government, with local authorities, with farmers, with developers, amongst others, to find lasting solutions that are both low cost and low carbon, and that will allow our customers today and in the future to enjoy first-class services. And it's really important that we maintain and strengthen that Team Scotland approach that Deirdre mentioned earlier. Now, our Piped by Us, Owned by You campaign is really helping highlight how, as a publicly owned organisation, we are all owners of Scottish Water, and we must all play an owner's part in safeguarding water resources and looking after assets. The campaign adverts, which feature some of our own people, are really helping to raise awareness of all of this, remind people what they can do that will help safeguard water supply and look after our wastewater assets. And as ever, we stand ready to be held to account as whether we're playing our part in supporting a flourishing Scotland and delivering the best service and value we can. But we must all play a part in protecting that most precious resource we have, which is water, using it wisely and ensuring, as the children were telling us earlier, that we must only flush the 3 Ps. Just to touch on investment, while that record investment is good news, we know we're going to need sustained investment to deliver what is needed now and for the future generations. So although we are investing at record levels, we're still only achieving around 40% of the necessary long-term replacement rate of our assets, many of which are ageing. Without additional investment, service standards will be compromised and environmental performance improvements that we want to deliver will stall. So I'm determined, along with all the team, to do all we can to not let that happen. And a perfect example of the kind of investment we need to help communities thrive and flourish, despite the challenges of more severe weather, can be seen at the Invercanny water treatment works just up the road near Banchory. We've just completed a refurbishment there that will help ensure that it has the resilience to deal with more challenging raw water quality, which is a consequence of that changed climate. The investment we've put in place there will mean that around 300,000 customers in Deeside can continue to receive fresh, clear, great-tasting water for years to come, as well as supporting housing and economic growth in the northeast of Scotland. So tomorrow morning, Deirdre and I will be attending the official opening of the updated site, a site that, given its proximity to Balmoral, has a real royal history and was opened by Queen Victoria in 1866. Now, I'm not sure we're going to be able to pull off the regal splendour that she no doubt delivered, but we'll do our best, won't we, Deirdre? And next month, we're set to also complete an 8 million upgrade at Manorfield Water Treatment Works, which will make Aberdeen's water supply even more resilient. And in wastewater, we're installing new sewer pipes in the centre of the city at Market Square, and that will help to reduce flood risk. So as I said, a lot of our assets are ageing, and they're going to need extra maintenance during the final years of their life before ultimately being replaced. But few of the assets we have were designed to cope with the type of weather conditions that have now become the norm. So we have a duty to help the country flourish and support communities as they grow. And as outlined in our climate change adaptation plan, we think over the next 25 years, we're going to need an extra £2 to £5 billion above existing expected investment if we're going to maintain services because of the changing weather. And that's why we made the decision to increase charges by 8.8% this year. That was in line with our regulatory settlement. It's part of ensuring we can maintain this essential investment that does keep everyone's taps running and helps us to manage wastewater effectively. So if we look at the bigger picture, yeah, this is a challenging time for the water sector in the UK and beyond. There are some really big decisions to be made about priorities, given that funding will always be finite, will always be tight. And we hope tonight we'll hear as many of your views as possible, as input from customers and stakeholders really helps us to determine which areas we should focus most upon. Now, above everything else, we are determined and committed to delivering for our customers and doing all we can to help Scotland adapt to climate change. So these are challenging times, but there are also times when we can seize new opportunities. And as we look ahead, I'm convinced we're on the right course to drive performance, continue to deliver those record investment levels, and further strengthen our customer focus. We're all leading Scottish Water to a position where we can be seen as an exemplary and innovative organisation, a great employer, and, most importantly, a trusted partner. And we're continuing to provide excellent services for customers at great value for money, to work with others to protect and enhance that precious natural environment, and to deliver our net zero emissions targets. I feel really privileged to lead this much trusted organisation, but I know that in the face of unprecedented challenges, we really must innovate, transform how we work, and work ever more collaboratively with partners and customers. And in closing, I just want to say I feel really proud of our past, I really feel really positive about the present, and I'm confident about our shared future. Thank you all for listening.
Very much. I think that was an excellent overview of Scottish Water's performance to date, and I hope you got a lot of insight out of that. So we're now going to move to questions and answers, and to joining Alex on the panel today, and who've been behaving very well, so well done. We've got senior executives with us today from Scottish Water. So we've got Peter, who is Peter Farrer, our Chief Operating Officer. We've got Lynn Highway, our Director of People. We've got Simon Parsons, our Director of Environment Planning and Assurance. And in the audience, there is no escape. We have Alan Dingwall, CFO. We've got Rob Mustard, Director of Capital Investment. And we've got Kes Yusukoviak, who is over there. So they are all here to help answer some of the questions and that we're here to take from yourselves. So we have had some come online as well, and we've had some submitted to us earlier. So I'll start going through some of those, but if you in the audience would also like to ask a question, we've got roving mic, so we will also come to yourselves. So I hope that's going to work for us all. But let me start first. So we had a question from Mary Cowdrey from Corstorphine in Edinburgh, so hopefully she is watching online. And this is one for you, Simon. And basically Mary's saying, I'm seeing so much more and far worse flooding in our streets. I know councils have had a part to play also, but what more can Scottish Water do to help with this? After all, climate change is not new, and we know heavy rain can and does happen, as we've said. Simon, over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much to Mary for her question. I think Edinburgh and Corstorphine is very similar to a lot of our major cities where we're seeing more intense rainfall, and as Deirdre mentioned, we're seeing lots and lots more named storms. So what that means is for cities like Aberdeen and for Edinburgh that were built many, many years ago, is the water doesn't necessarily have the right places to go. So it ends up flooding properties, it ends up flooding streets, and the infrastructure on the round of it. Now, we ourselves can't solve that problem. We have to work very, very closely with local authorities and other parties as well to help solve some of those challenges. So, for example, in Edinburgh, we have a really good partnership between City of Edinburgh Council, ourselves, Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, and many other groups come together to think about how do we stop that rainwater entering the sewers, but actually manage it on the surface. And that really needs us to think very, very differently about cities. Where does that water go? The water has to go somewhere. How can we collect that water or capture it very close to where it rains? And that's why we're thinking much more about use of kind of greener infrastructure, trees, parks. How can we use that as a way of capturing the surface water itself? And one of the areas in terms of not far from Corstorphine in Edinburgh, in an area called Craigleith, we're also working with individual property owners. So a lot of that rainwater falls on properties, falls on roofs, and then gets into our sewerage system very, very quickly. So even if we can slow it down, slow that rainfall down, means that we can then protect the sewers and protect properties in the streets from flooding. So it's about us working with local authorities, but it's also us and local homeowners playing their part in it as well.
No, great, thank you. And I think basically you're saying there is a lot we can do, and there is a lot we are doing. So, but recognising lots of challenges. Thank you, Simon. Well, I'm now going to take us to the issue of CSOs, which has been challenging water companies throughout the UK. I've got two questions actually. I'm going to ask you. I'll say them together, and then I'm going to come to you, Alex, and then I think Simon, you'll be brought in as well. So, first question is from Jenny Haynes in East Lothian. Question, why in 2024 do we need CSOs? Surely we should be doing everything we can to ensure no traces of human waste are in our seas. I ask as someone who has recently taken up wild swimming and feel very angry that I don't feel that the lovely beaches near where I live are safe. You find money for other things, why not this? And then also from Tess White, who's MSP for North East of Scotland. She should be watching online as well. When does Scottish Water see an end to discharging raw sewage into our seas after preliminary screening, brackets through a 4mm sieve? I've seen this issue myself at Johns Haven. Alex?
So thank you, Jenny and Tess, for those questions. I'll try and bring them together because they sort of touch a number of issues. One is around the environmental standards for how we treat water going into water bodies. One is about the higher standards that we treat to when you have a designating bathing water. And then it also is a question about CSOs generally. And I think it's probably the thing to start with. It's really important to understand that we, at our wastewater treatment works, we always are treating wastewater to the standards that are required by our regulators, which in this case is SEPA, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. Now, in normal times, we're discharging it to those standards, and in the bathing waters, there's that higher standard that I mentioned. And in both cases, I mean, as I said at the beginning, 87% of our waters in Scotland are seen as being in good or better ecological condition. So we have a really good starting point. And the issues that drive water quality in the environment, as I said before, are not just about what Scottish Water does, but it's a range of partners that need to work together to further improve that. When it comes to designated bathing waters, it's important to remember that not all waters are designated for bathing. It is only certain waters that are in that condition. When they have that designation, we then treat to that higher standard. And again, as I mentioned, the good or excellent number for last year was 84%, an increase on previous years. Still more to do. We'd like to get that higher, but it's important to recognise the difference between the two. And then coming back to Jenny's question about why have CSOs at all, I suppose if I think about that, more widely, would it be better if we had a completely separate sewage system and a completely separate stormwater system? Yeah, it would. But we don't. We have the system that we have, which we've inherited, which is a combined system that treats both sewage and stormwater. And in that situation, then this system has to operate in the way I described, so that otherwise, if you got to the point where in heavy rain the treatment works is inundated, the only option then would be for everything to back up into people's homes and businesses. So then the CSO plays a really important part in the system. It provides that release valve. If we were to move to a system whereby you had completely separate systems, you would need to spend more than £10 billion of investment to get to that system. You have to replumb the whole of Scotland. And we just don't have the money available for that. And the scale of investment increases in bills would be needed would be astronomical. Indeed, even at that level, I'm not sure we'd have the workforce that could realistically do it. So I understand people's concerns about this, but I come back to that point. When a CSO operates in heavy rain, what is discharged into the environment is 99% water of different sorts, and it should not be a concern from the point of view of the environment. So those are kind of trying to pick up both the questions from Jenny and from Tess. But Simon, is there anything to add to that?
I mean, if I can pick up on the second question in terms of Tess, I think it's really important to our treatment and our regulations are driven by where that discharges are going to. So we will have licences and we'll have consents that we are due to meet, which is driven by the receiving water and making sure there's zero impact or very, very low impact on that receiving water. So our treatment is dependent on those. I think what's interesting is how we're changing. So we're thinking much more nowadays about sewage as a resource rather than necessarily just a problem to deal with. So how do we recover nutrients from it? How can we use it as a source for heat, for example? So even at the moment in Scottish Water, are thinking about how we design wastewater treatment and how do we use those kind of, in essence, society's waste as a resource, changing the way we're thinking about some of the infrastructure we're building in the decades to come.
And just finally, picking up Simon's point, when we can do that, it's a perfect example of a circular economy, because you're turning, as you say, what was used to be thought of as a waste product into something that has a beneficial impact on society.
Oh, good, thank you both very much. Given the focus on this, does anybody in the room have anything they'd like to add or ask an additional question? Yes, please, can we have the mic down here, please? Would you like to say who you are? And you're very welcome, please.
Good evening, and apologies for being late.
That's all right.
I'm afraid the taxi system in Aberdeen has been taking lessons from ScotRail on a certain division. My name is Robert Miller-Bakewell. I'm an investment analyst, known to one of your non-executive directors, who you can check me out with. I've been doing stuff in the water industry since the 1970s, long before privatisation came on. I'd like to, on the whole subject of CSOs, because it is a public sector involvement in terms of the councils, it's their sort of a release valve. To what extent has Scottish Water in recent years had any capital or revenue contributions from councils towards the costs that you are bearing for them fulfilling their responsibilities under the various highways legislation, drainage? Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. Because at the moment, in terms of roads drainage, I think is a point you're talking about. Roads drainage obviously comes into our sewer system, and then obviously uses up the capacity in that sewer system. And there's a lot of history here in terms of local authorities and where Scottish Water came from many, many years ago. I think the key question you're asking was about, are they funding or helping support that? I think what I'd point to is some of the emerging partnerships we've got, and probably the most mature of this is around Glasgow City Council. So Glasgow, for example, we've worked with what's called the Metropolitan Glasgow Strategic Drainage Partnership. Even after 20 years, we still haven't got a snappy name for that. But there's a great example about how actually development organisations in Glasgow, Glasgow City Council, ourselves, have come together to make sure that we work together to deal with water quality in the Clyde, which has improved substantially over the years, flooding in the city, and enabling growth. So there are schemes where we've all contributed together financially to actually support those three outcomes. And the one that particularly I'm always talking about kind of in the UK and globally on is a scheme called the Glasgow Smart Canal. So there's one that deals with the surface water and make sure that's managed correctly, has enabled thousands of houses in the north of Glasgow in an area that wasn't open to growth before, and that's co-funded between ourselves, City of Council, and generates a revenue for Scottish Canals. Perfect win-win-win project, but these are difficult. These projects are very difficult to get going and working together, and it's often the question, as you've called out, I think, is how do you fund them, who funds them, and that partnership agreement. So in our partnerships, we work very closely right up front to get the partnership funding agreements in place.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Okay, I'm going to move us on now. We're going to talk about investment. So we've had a question from Steve Rowe of Dunbar. So thank you, Steve. And this is coming to Alan and then Rob. So question, how much do you plan to invest in the next decade, and what will be your priority areas and why? And are we, customers, really getting good value for money? And how do you compare financially with the other UK companies, most of which we know are private? Alan.
Thank you, Steve, for the question. So I guess the first thing is on value. We're never complacent about value, but hopefully we can demonstrate that we are delivering good value through this answer. We do it in three ways, I think. So firstly, on investment, we'll invest just over £1 billion per annum. I think it's important to note that investment will increase each year. We see demand going up, and we prioritise based on our three strategic priorities. So in terms of the investment, about 250 million of that 1.1 billion is repairs. The rest is spent on our assets, projects to make us more efficient, and net zero elements. In terms of demand increasing, we've heard about our ageing assets. That drives our repairs, which we have seen increase substantially. We've heard about change through climate and regulation. and also, importantly, growth. One of our key aims is to support growth. In terms of how we prioritise, I think it's around about the 3 strategic priorities. So net zero, that's both taking carbon out of our own operations, but also investing in renewable technology, for example, in our fleet. It's around about great value and sustainable finance, which is in many ways about making us more efficient, but also importantly supporting growth, particularly in housing and development around about the country. And then finally delivering a great service. And there's been lots of statistics today in terms of the bathing waters, great tasting fresh water obviously. And a lot of the repairs are making us more efficient in responding to those things quickly and making sure customers are not inconvenienced more. So just to recap the question, we're investing about £1 billion a year. We expect that to go up because demand is increasing, and we prioritise based on our key priorities. In terms of how we compare, our average bills are a little bit lower than England's, so about 5% or so, and Rob's got a bit more to say on both the comparison and value and investment.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thanks for the question. I mean, ultimately, every pound of that £1 billion that we spend is a customer pound, so we treat it with the value it respects. We do have a value for money assurance model that we brought in a number of years ago, and that tracks us on a number of things, but mainly delivery efficiency and also cost and time. We've actually just completed the annual review of that framework and the assurance framework in May, June this year. So if I just touch on a couple of areas, cost and time, that, as part of that measure, we continue to outperform against our framework pricing and our key frameworks. Overall, we've reviewed 28 frameworks, and out of that, 24 of them were outperforming the rest of the industry in the UK, and 4 were found to be at the market price. So we're there thereabouts in terms of the way that we procure and buy our services, albeit those headwinds that we had heard from Alex earlier on in the construction market. The other one I'll touch on is delivery efficiency, and pound in the ground is one of the measures that we talk about. So that tracks the contribution in overhead that Scottish Water and partners have to deliver the product into the ground. Now, we benchmark ourselves as part of the UK water industry, and on average, Scottish Water is about 10% less than the UK industry in terms of our pound in the ground measure. But we're not complacent. We've got lots to do, and that is part of the transformation programme, again, that Alex mentioned earlier, as further opportunities to provide that continued value.
Great, thank you both very much. I think very clear, comprehensive replies from both of you. Thank you. Peter, I'm coming to you now because we've got a question about our drinking water, and both Alex and I talked about the high percentage that we have that we're very proud of. The question is coming from Bree Panel from Renfrew, who is online, so welcome Bree. How do you keep our drinking water safe and purified? Given climate change, are you having to change the way you treat water before it comes to our taps? And does that mean more or different chemicals? Peter.
Okay, so the short answer to that is, are we changing the way that we treat water? In a lot of cases, yes. Does that necessarily mean increase to chemicals? No. And I'll give you a bit of background to that. But first of all, just to give you a bit of a foundation, Scottish Water's catchments, where the rainfall is collected for drinking water purposes, they're predominantly organic peatland. And the surface water collects organic material from the peatland while it's collected and before we treat it. Now, around 85% of our upland catchments contain organic rich soils, and clearly with climate change, with heavy rainfall patterns, that is changing the way that these organic materials are picked up from the catchments and taken for treatment. Some of our treatment works can deal with that, but a lot of them can't. And because there's such a variation now in the quantity of organic material and in terms of the characteristics of those organics. And we need to remove these through the treatment process. So what sort of things are we doing to deal with that challenge? Well, fortunately, there's quite a lot of innovation going on in treatment technology in our business. So, for example, to name ion exchange and membrane technologies have really moved to the forefront of our asset adaptation plans to deal with these climate change issues, because they're fantastic at removing these parameters that we're finding and helping us to continue to deliver really safe and high quality drinking water to our customers every day. The other thing about them is they can be, most of these modern technologies can be built and fabricated off-site in factory conditions, which means that they can be more effective, they can be safer to build, and it also helps us with our net zero ambitions to reduce the amount of embodied carbon that we have through our activities. So that's just a quick summary of that. So the direct answer to that question is that we're not necessarily using more chemicals. These particular treatment technologies don't use a lot of chemicals, but they are really taking out and targeting the compounds that we need to take out in the most effective way.
Super, Peter. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to turn, we've got Claire Marsden and we've got Peter Smith in the audience today, but you both submitted questions, so are you happy that I read them out? And then if you've got anything you'd like to build on, that's super. Thank you. So this is coming to you, Simon. So from Claire, who's Inchgarth Biodiversity Initiative, whilst I applaud Scottish Water's commitment to reaching net zero and enhancing biodiversity on your land, how do you propose to increase the opportunities of achieving this through improved working partnerships with knowledgeable local communities? And from Peter Smith, Cults, Bealdside and Milltimber Community Council, does Scottish Water plan to survey all its sites for biodiversity and, where feasible, alter management arrangements to increase biodiversity? Simon.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for the conversation earlier on as well. So let me start with Peter's question first in terms of doing that. So we are committed to, Scottish Water's committed to kind of what's called biodiversity net gain. So we should be having a positive impact on biodiversity across Scotland. And to start off with that, what we've done is we've done a national survey and benchmarking of where are we currently in terms of biodiversity across all of our assets and across our 20-odd thousand hectares of land as well. And that's a really, really important starting point for us, because we can't say we're having a net gain unless we've actually got a starting position. So we're committed to doing that, and that's on our operational sites, on our land ownings, but also as part of all of our capital projects that you've just heard from Alan and Rob about. Every single one of those has an ambition to make a positive contribution in terms of biodiversity. And what do we mean that? What are the kind of things we're doing? So we are improving our peatland. So we're actually turning peatland into far more kind of positive and beneficial peatland. We're planting trees. So we're planting, kind of in essence, we will be planting millions of trees across Scotland. We're, and doing very local things around improving meadows on our sites, beehives, bat boxes, and finding lots of opportunities for doing that. So across Scotland, we are doing that in terms of looking to do that and looking to do more of that type of work. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of examples of that, and then I'll come back to the specific question about working with communities. So one of the projects I'm incredibly proud that we've just kicked off is working around our Catrin Reservoir, and that supplies the water into Glasgow. So some of the challenges that Peter talked about there in terms of supplying the water into Glasgow. But we own the land there, so working with Forestry and Land Scotland, we'll be planting what will be about 7,000 football pitches worth of new woodland there. So that is an amazing contribution in terms of that area, and we're also improving all of the peatland on that site. And that's a multi-decade project there to improve that whole catchment, which will also help protect the water quality, as Peter talked about. And then more locally, at the actual reservoirs, local reservoirs in Mulgai, working with the local community there, we've looked to improve the whole access and also the local site to make it much better for users, because that has hundreds of thousands of local users go to that site. And it wasn't necessarily in the best condition, so we've worked with the community there. And also, so how do we get better at that? I think we're learning in terms of how we best work with communities. We're very, very good at improving, delivering water, and we're very, very good at taking society's waste away and recycling it safely to the environment. But we've now got to think about how do we do that better. And I think there's some good learning from us from our experience here in Aberdeen about how we could communicate better and how can we engage specialists or local experts in that. So I think commitment for us is we're committed to biodiversity net gain. How do we do it and how do we get better at that is something I think we're very committed to doing going forward.
Super, Simon. Thank you. Thank you for your question. And hopefully that helps to answer, and obviously ongoing dialogue, I guess. 100%. So thank you very much. Right, I'm now going to change tack a bit and talk collaboration. So Rob and Lynn, this is coming your way. So this is from Lisa Megan. Lisa is here, I think. So Lisa, do you want to ask your question? Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Megan. I'm a local resident here in Aberdeen. Firstly, just to say thanks to both Deirdre and Alex for your presentations. That was a really interesting afternoon. My question is around, does Scottish Water consider collaboration and synergies with third parties, with other utilities companies, with local authorities, local councils, with a view to mutually increased efficiencies and minimising disruption to the general public? And I realise that obviously comes with increased integrated planning issues, complexities. So that's something you need to balance as you do those things.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question, Rob.
Okay, thanks very much for the question. In terms of the £1 billion investment that we have, we've obviously got a considerable programme of work that impacts across Scotland, and particularly, as you've pointed out, in the roads network, for example, our customers that are trying to get from A to B. And we're very mindful about minimising the impact of our works, not only in the immediate vicinity of the community, but also people that travel through communities. So one of the things that we do, we're members of the National and Local Roads Authority. It's called ROC, which is where utilities come together. It's normally chaired by the local authority, the roads department. And what we start to look at is the type of work that's coming, the nature of the work, and then other opportunities to coordinate and calibrate better. One of the good examples of that recently has actually been in Perth, where we're delivering what I would call a super sewer up the middle of Perth, and we've managed to work with the other agencies there to make sure they can get their work done in and around us, but also the resurfacing of the road is done straight after the work that we've done. So that's just one example of where we sort of collaborate and there's a framework to actually do it. Another example is one that Simon gave earlier, for example, in North Edinburgh, where we're collaborating with various parties to actually execute a different solution to the additional flooding solution that we might have done before. So I think the challenge is for us, we've got over 30,000 projects in the system at any one time. Some of those need quite an immediate response. Some of them we can be really thoughtful and plan out, and that's exactly where we try and do exactly what you've said.
That's great. Thank you. Lynn, do you want to add?
Yeah, but I think in addition to what Rob's just covered, there's probably another couple of areas that are useful to bring to life. So we know there's a huge amount of focus in terms of the skills that are needed across Scotland to help the future economy. So we are doing a lot of work with our supply chain partners, with Skills Development Scotland, with Scottish Government, to look at how we build future skills and collaborate together. And we're also working with other utility organisations. So very much focusing on that Team Scotland to make sure that as part of that wider environment that we are contributing and helping equip Scotland for the future. So that would be one example where we put the organisation to one side and think about the overall Team Scotland. Another example would be focusing on how we collaborate to support our colleagues and our employees in the communities that they live and work in. So we're looking at a number of things around our diversity and inclusion agenda and collaborating around that. So looking at how we have a representative workforce and working with organisations like Action for Children to try and support youth coming into organisations and think about how we can support people who may not otherwise obtain employment in Scottish Water or other organisations actually come into our apprenticeship scheme. So we're doing some collaboration with them just now. And we're also doing collaboration with a lot of other support groups. So for example, the Vocal Network to support our colleagues and the communities who are maybe carers and supporting the wider community to think about how we can collaborate to just give people the support and the tools that they need. So both in terms of skills and day-to-day life, we're working hard to collaborate as well.
Super, Lynn. Thank you very much. Hope that was helpful, Lisa. We're now going to ask Kez to pick up the next one. And this is from David McLeod, who's from the Independent Customer Group. And David's watching online, so thank you for your question, David. How does Scottish Water plan to leverage data, AI, and emerging technologies to enhance customer service, particularly in improving response times, personalised communication, and proactive issue resolution? Kez.
So thanks to David for the question. As you would expect, an organisation of our size, which has over 5 million customers, tens of thousands of miles of network and thousands of assets, data is expected of us every day. It's integral into the decisions that we make. So how are we using it just now? Well, we use it to plan tasks. We use it to predict asset condition, asset failures, the climate change models that have been talked about extensively. We use it to proactively alert when our assets are struggling. Intelligent networks and the sewer's been a good example of that. And we use it to gather insights so we can make better decisions going forward. Some of the emerging opportunities that we see in AI, certainly a buzzword now, full of hype, but we are leaning into that already, and we've deployed probably a couple of examples I'll just talk about. We're using that to help our field ops to make better decisions, so it can gather information on previous job types, previous history, what happened here before, and helping to summarise that into a quick number of actions. And that's whether they're dealing with a customer or an asset. It's got that great knowledge management, and we need to do more of that. I think I'll maybe just say what we're not doing with AI as well, because I think that's just as important. We're not using that to deal with customer information. We're not using that to communicate with customers. While it will help our field teams to be more informed, we're certainly not looking to use that to directly interact with customers. In the future, we are going to build our capability to look at social media to understand sentiment across all the platforms that are out there, so we can better deal with communities. Enhance our knowledge management capabilities. So linked to the collaboration skills agenda that Lynn's just talked about, how can we close the skills gap by having better knowledge management processes? And then lastly, with all the data that we collect on every minute from all our assets, how can we get better insights from those to make better decisions to adapt better to climate change going forward? So hopefully that gives a kind of overview of what we're doing and what we plan to do in the future.
No, great, Kez. Thank you very much. That's excellent. Okay, I think we've got some questions coming in online. And we are running tight to time. And I've got one in the. Are we happy we can run over? Can I get the nod from people, please? Get the permission? Great. Christine, have you got some questions for us, please?
Can you hear me? We've got a couple here, Deirdre. The first one that is the press is saying English water companies like Thames might have to raise their prices by as much as 60%. Is that something that Scotland might face, or are you worried about that?
Okay, Alex, that sounds like one for you.
So, yes, I mean, part of the issue that I think you're seeing playing out in England is that a view was taken some years back by the economic regulator that said they were looking at trying to drive bills to be as low as they could be. And generally, one would always want bills to be as low as they could be. But I think what happened was there was a period of time when investment could have been delivered and it wasn't. So there's sort of now a chance to they're trying to catch up with a lot of lost time. Whereas what happened in Scotland is the decision was more to see a steady increase in bills to try and keep up with that more severe climate that we've all talked about. So whilst the future in terms of where bills will go and investment will go is one we still need to work through. That will be part of our next strategic review of charges, 2027. I think we're in a better place because there's been a sort of steady view rather than a reduction and then an attempt to recover, which is what's happening with some of the plans in England that are being considered at the moment. So, in short, I suspect we're going to need more investment. I suspect that's going to put pressure on bills, but I don't expect it to be quite as big an increase as the numbers being talked about there.
Super, thank you very much, very clear. I think we've got a question from the audience. Would you like to come in? Can we have the microphone, please? And I have been given permission to go slightly over time, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm Karen van Sweden. I'm one of the local councillors. I'm in the ward next door to this, and we have the River Don running through. So, yeah, we have some issues with flooding there as well. I'm really interested to hear how you're looking after Scotland's blue gold. It's really precious. And obviously a resource that we can't live without. We need to have water. I guess my first question is, and I have a few for you, is how do you feel that your interaction with Aberdeen City Council is? And is it meeting your expectations?
I think it's well, I'll start, but Simon might want to come in. I mean, generally, I think the development of our relationship with Aberdeen City Council has been good. It's been improving over time. There's still more we could do. There are some specific works we're doing with Aberdeen, particularly looking at flooding, because, as we talked about earlier, flooding issues always are complicated. They rely upon a number of agencies working together to reduce flood risk. And there are some good things happening here in Aberdeen. But Simon, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I mean, what I'd first say is probably if I went back 10 years ago, I don't necessarily think we were on the kind of top of the list for City Council, primarily driven by growth. And I think the teams have done an amazing amount of work to really work very closely with the city to support growth within the city. A lot of our work at the moment with the City Council is actually associated with flooding. So between our two organisations, we've developed, in essence, a master plan for the city in terms of what we would need to do to make sure it can adapt to the future of climate change. And I think some of the questions we had earlier, that can only happen by really good working together, really good collaboration, as Kez has talked about, sharing data and information between ourselves. And I think that is some of the work that we've done in the city here is exemplar across the UK in terms of that city-wide wide planning. And the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency have been a key partner in that as well. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, I think at the moment our relationships are really good with the city, driven by learning from some of the challenges we had in the past.
Okay, and the other question I wanted to ask you as well, I've got a few, but I'll maybe write to you. Your learnings from other, obviously what's happening in England, it's an outlier. I don't know if you're aware of that, but you know, the neoliberalism of water supply is a huge mistake, and most countries don't do that. So I'm interested, especially are you learning things from the Netherlands, because obviously they're really on top of hydrology, and they know how to move water and how to do things with water. But other countries as well, what are your learnings from them?
Yeah, I mean, this is some of what I touched upon. So Simon and I were in Toronto talking to colleagues from across the world around some of these issues. And there is, of course, learning we can take from countries like Netherlands, like parts of Germany. Indeed, there was some learning I think we were taking from Australia, actually, in terms of how they think about water resources, where I think they're a long way ahead of where we are. But equally, there's quite a lot of stuff that we were talking about where other countries were learning from us. So the whole point of these things, you get this exchange and you get to understand best practice and what works really well. And so that's, I think, the reason why it was worth investing in these kind of things. And it's why, as I mentioned, Glasgow 2026, which is where we'll bring the World Waters Congress to Glasgow, will be a fantastic opportunity to do more of this, particularly in the kind of areas you're just touching on, because that integration around managing surface water in cities is critical across the world, actually. And so how do we work together to get that right is probably one of the most important things we're doing.
Super, thank you very much. Right, we've got two more questions I'm going to go for, if that's okay. So one, Lynn, this is for you, and I think this is really important. This is from Margaret Smith in Aberdeenshire. I've got 4 teenage grandchildren. With all the talk of public sector pay limits, how are you appealing to people like my children to help ensure you have the right workforce for the future? And what benefits does a job at an organisation like yours give them? Over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Margaret, for the opportunity to do an unashamed plug for what a great organisation Scottish Water is. So I think first and foremost, we're really acutely aware of the need to attract and retain new talent and new thinking into the organisation. So the point you raise is very front of mind for us as an employer. First and foremost, we know that for many of the youth who are coming through, purpose is really important to them. The type of organisation they work for, why the organisation exists is one of the key factors for them. And I hope what we've spoken about today convinces you and your grandchildren that Scottish Water has a very clear and compelling purpose that is absolutely great to work for. I think secondly, there's something very important around the learning that we provide to our workforce, and particularly the youth coming through. We've currently got over 300 apprentices and graduates that we're training and qualifying at the moment, and we've got great movement around the organisation. We support people gain qualifications whilst working, and not every organisation does that, and we get great feedback from them, and we do a great job of retaining and engaging them. So that would be the second thing. If they want to learn and develop their career and get opportunities to move around a really diverse and interesting organisation, then Scottish Water is a great choice. Thirdly, in terms of public sector pay strategy, that clearly is a factor for us. We have to operate within public sector pay strategy, but we also benchmark regularly, and we've recently just undertaken some benchmarking, looking at public sector organisations, looking at other utility organisations and other private companies to make sure that we are well placed within the normal economic parameters that you would expect any organisation to look at. And pay is one element, but we also offer great pension facilities, other benefits for our employees financially. So I do think that we're very well placed with that. And we've just built in future pay progression for the majority of our workforce. And then the last thing is that actually the people you work with is really important. So the teams that they would work with really matter. And we've got a great colleague base who are really committed to supporting our new recruits and the next generation of Scottish Water employees, and do a great job with that. And we've just had some great feedback from a recent employee survey that would indicate that we're doing a really good job of that, and that these people who have just joined us want to stay and strive to perform really well for Scotland and to help Scotland flourish. So I would definitely recommend Scottish Water.
Yeah, so thank you, Lynn. Well done. And hopefully your grandchildren will be suitably compelled, as are many other people. So thank you for that. Peter, I'm going to come to you for the last question. And we've got lots of questions. So if we haven't been able to answer them today, they'll be answered and put online. So you will get answers for those that we haven't been able to address today. But Peter, this is coming from Damiola Kazim, RS Components Aberdeen. She was supposed to be here, but I can't see her. But thank you, Damiola, for the question. What are the biggest challenges faced by engineers and technicians in the maintenance or repair operations of Scottish Water assets?
Okay, there are many challenges. In the interest of time, and the fact that Damilola is from an electrical mechanical components company, I'll sort of channel my answers towards that. So we've got many thousands of assets in Scottish Water, and we deliver over 100,000 maintenance tasks every year, and these require many thousands of new parts and new components. The scale of this is huge and getting even bigger because of the things that we've talked about. Ageing assets and climate change is driving the amount of maintenance activity that we have. So the first key challenge is the volume of the maintenance tasks that we carry out, and it's mainly due to the age of our assets and the scale of the investment that we have in order to repair these. We do try and limit the failure rate that we are having to deal with through maintenance tasks by carrying out proactive maintenance on these assets, and we carry out tens of thousands of preventive maintenance tasks every year in order to reduce the amount of failure, which then goes on to impact on the great service that we provide to our customers. Secondly, and we've talked about that, the pace of technology is changing. New treatment technologies And all of these pieces of equipment that we've got can become obsolete fairly quickly. That then requires upgrades. However, in order to deliver these upgrades, it takes time, and we have a huge amount of critical spares that we keep in order to keep the old technologies going while we've got time and the finance available to do the upgrades. Just picking on another challenge for us, particularly in Aberdeen, actually, the fact that we're here. There's an industry-wide demand for skilled mechanical, electrical, instrumentation and control engineers, particularly up here. We've always suffered from the booms in the oil industry, taking away a number of our skilled people. But as Lynn said, we have really, in the last number of years, ramped up our modern apprenticeship programme, particularly in the MIAICA space. And our Skills Academy is really focusing on the mechanical, electrical and instrumentation part of that to grow our own talent from within. The final thing is the variation in the weather that we've talked about. The severe weather puts massive pressure on our assets, but we've got teams of people who deal with that 24/7 and make sure that any problems that we have are fixed and maintained as quickly as possible, again, to prevent impact on customers. There is millions I could talk about this.
Thank you, Peter. That's marvellous. No, thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate that. And no points to me for bringing this in on time, so my apologies to you for that. But thank you for staying with us for it. So thank you, Alex, and to our other members of the ELT for being so open and transparent in terms of our the questions and the answers. I hope you've really appreciated those and benefited from them. So this wraps up proceedings, and I hope it has been interesting and informative. I think we've covered the range of issues that we needed to cover, and I hope we certainly get great insights when you give us that input, so thank you for that. It's really important that we have the opportunity to speak with you directly and for you to keep the conversation going. So thank you again for coming tonight, for being online, and for keeping the correspondence going with us. As we keep saying to you, we are publicly owned, you own us, we are independently regulated, and we're commercially run. It's your water, so please help us by playing your part. So thank you again, everybody, and can I wish you a very good evening.